Hello there, and welcome to the masterclass, which is all about the 4 R's of gut healing. I'm Jenn Rice, and I'm trying a different way of presenting for us. It's going to be through this Canva recording studio, which if it works really well, that'll be great. If it doesn't, at least you'd have me kind of in the corner. I was before on Zoom trying to move the camera around, and I feel like this might work the best. So let's just dive right in. For members of the Love Your Gut Club, I just want to first off say congratulations, and you should be super just proud of yourself for investing in your own health, moving the dial forward every day when it comes to your health, tuning into this platform, listening to the master classes, asking questions, giving feedback. It's so helpful for me going forward when we do this. And the 4 R's of gut healing, I didn't start off the membership with this, but I feel like this is very fundamental and really important for anyone who is joining Love Your Gut Club or has just begun. I hope that this is one of the first master classes that you go back and review, because I think it's really pivotal and key to continued success with gut health over time. I know I personally have to continue to review these principles. And when I was making this slide deck for this month's master class, I thought, I need to review some of this because I have had some things creep back into my eating, like artificial preservatives or packaged goods or all of that kind of thing. So let's just dive right into remove. And the 4 R's of gut healing it's a process that many people in functional medicine have, different various, it can be the 5 R's, it could be the 6 R's. I stick with the 4 R's because I'm just keeping it simple. And the first one is remove, because remove has everything to do with removing things that are contributing to our overall inflammation. They're barriers to our gut healing. And it's the first place that we want to start. So just to review, I'm Jenn Rice. I am your gut coach and hopefully your coach with all things and guidance through functional and integrative approach to medicine. I am a conventionally and allopathic trained physician assistant and have been for the past almost 17 years. I can't believe how the time has flown. And I received a fellowship in anti-aging and functional medicine through A4M, which is the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. That fellowship program was very in-depth on ways that we can use an integrative approach to health and aging so that we can all age better, feel better. Often aging is thought of as a bad thing, but we want it to be something that we're embracing and moving forward through with hopefully the least amount of chronic disease, prescriptions, surgical interventions, medical emergencies, etc. And my mission with Love Your Gut Club is helping women and men to take more control over your own health, not really leaving it to your primary care providers or specialists to be your only source, because most of medicine, regardless of where you live, is very busy. There's limited amount of time with patients. I know this I still practice dermatology 3 days a week. We run a very busy schedule, and it is important for patients to be their own advocate. So I learned kind of the hard way to be my own advocate. I do it for my family and friends, and I want to be able to help you be your own best advocate for you and your family so that you're not relying on prescriptions or other interventions. We can really use some of these other things to excel in our health. Remove often has a negative, right, connotation. When you think of the word remove, it implies like moving something away, taking it away. And I think that it doesn't necessarily mean, though, that there's going to be less joy in your eating. It doesn't mean that you can never have anything that you love to eat again. All of these things are fluid in that we only can feel like it's a negative thing if we make it that. Because I would argue that remove is a positive word because it's going to be moving us to a better health, a better lifestyle, better improvement of symptoms, losing the weight, getting our hormones in check, all of that good stuff. So when we look at this masterclass and we think of the word remove, let's try to imagine this, though, as a positive step forward, the first step forward, versus something negative as in taking away. I think this could be better referred to as reducing or resetting. So resetting, I think, has more of a positive connotation. Reducing meaning not using as much of maybe something that's not as good for us. So let's just refer to this step 1 of 4 R's of gut healing. Let's look at like resetting, right? And food sensitivities are a big, big part of the 4 R's of gut healing, and uncovering hidden food sensitivities, intestinal permeability. This too is something I'll go a little bit deeper in here in a second, but food sensitivities, arthritis, anxiety, what do all these things have in common? And these conditions have all been put together and been associated with a impaired gastrointestinal health, whether that's from poor diet, excessive stress. This can all impact our digestion negatively. And it can potentially result in this increased intestinal permeability, which in turn causes more of a systemic inflammation. And then there can be the development of chronic health symptoms and conditions. So you see this stepwise approach coming. So I'm eating something that's full of additives and preservatives and not good for me. I'm creating an increased intestinal permeability, so things are leaking through the gut into the system, my whole, the interstitial system, and creating inflammation. And that increased inflammation is leading me to chronic disease. Initially, probably acute symptoms or smoldering chronic symptoms, but then eventually some type of quote unquote diagnosis of something more chronic and lasting. So step 1 is avoiding stressors and triggers. And one of those main stresses or triggers is food additives. And just to review on what does an increased intestinal permeability even mean? So this term is described as the control of material passing from inside the gut, so inside the GI tract, mouth to anus, through the cells that are lining the gut wall. So we have a very thin layer of cells that line the gut wall, and it passes into the rest of the body. And from even this, I'm reading out of this PubMed, so a study that was done on intestinal permeability. Increased intestinal permeability is a diagnosis that is recognized by allopathic or conventional medicine. It's not just recognized by functional medicine. So increased intestinal permeability has a role in the inflammation process and also has a lot to do with nutrients in general. And when we're talking about food additives, these things can really cause a problem because food additives are something that is not naturally found, right? So food additives, and I'll go a little bit deeper into the food additives here in just a second. so many ingredients really they can sneak into our food nowadays. It's really easy to overlook common food additives. I never looked for these things. I just sort of bought what I liked and I didn't really worry about what was in there. And many of them are harmless. Like this is not something that's going to create like a toxin overload, but they can damage our gut bacteria, which then causes, this chronic inflammation. And when we're looking at packaged foods, we want to be careful of certain ingredients. Like, for example, polysorbate 80 is an emulsifier, and this stabilizes liquids that would normally separate, giving them this like creamy, homogeneous consistency. And a 2017 study found that polysorbate 80 decreases the beneficial bacteria in our gut, and it causes our pathogenic, or those bacteria that can cause disease, to feed on the polysorbate 80, which can lead to this chronic gut inflammation. And they've seen this not only contribute to weight gain in humans, but also in rodents. So they saw it first in the lab in, say, rodents, and then with humans in other studies. And they note that the polysorbate 80, it damages the gut bacteria gradually. So it's not like you're going to eat a bunch of polysorbate 80 preservative in something or some things and notice it like right away. This is like a creeper. It's going to, unless you have a serious gut imbalance, a single serving of polysorbate 80 isn't going to move the needle at all for you. But as a general rule, if we're looking at gut healing and gut optimizing, we want to watch out for foods that contain polysorbate 80. And this is usually in heavy cream, coconut milk, bottled sauces, dressings, and other viscous foods that combine fats and liquids. So with a little effort, you can find versions of these foods that don't contain these things. The next one is carboxymethylcellulose. Carboxymethylcellulose is sometimes listed in ingredient labels as cellulose gum or CMC. It's another common emulsifier that can cause problems with the gut. It's used as a thickening agent. So unlike the polysorbate 80, which harms the gut over time, this CMC, it can cause gut inflammation immediately, and it can mess with the gene expression of gut bacteria. So it's actually on a DNA level of the cells in our gut. It's interfering with that cell replication, and it's overproducing something called flagellin, which is a gut irritating protein. So here again, things that thicken foods, foods that may contain this CMC, fruit juices, milk, cream, baby formula, cream cheese, cottage cheese, dressing, gelatinous foods, like, things that are made into gelatin. I would think, an easy thought of that would be something like Jell-O, but I'm sure there's other gelatinous type of foods that are packaged that I'm not even thinking of. But where this hits a nerve for me a little is I remember thinking I was really healthy in college and eating cottage cheese and fruit. So like I'd have cottage cheese and some fruit, as well as maybe cream cheese and a bagel, and not knowing though that it could be containing some of these additives that I didn't even know about or think about. I'm mentioning this because you may be having a low-fat cottage cheese or having a certain kind of cottage cheese or cream cheese that you feel like is okay, or a packaged dip mix. Like they make all these sort of plant-based dips now, which I haven't bothered to really look if they have these CMCs in it, but I'm certainly going to look now. And I think this is just another good lesson of unless something looks like it does in nature, banana looks like a banana, oyster looks like an oyster, a carrot looks like a carrot. There can be extra things in it. So anything we buy that's packaged through the freezer section or dry goods section, or even it looks like the dairy section packaged, could be a problem. Sucralose, Splenda, it's everywhere. It's an artificial sweetener. It's been around for a while, but it took some heat when they mentioned in the major news media that it may be contributing to cancer. But it turns out that the sucralose doesn't cause cancer unless you're drinking like tons of cans of diet soda a day. But it does have other issues that may be worth avoiding, things like Splenda. When they gave it to rats in a lab, they saw a nearly 50% decrease in the beneficial gut bacteria. It showed heightened liver enzymes, which can interfere with absorbing our nutrients and drugs. There's really not a good reason to eat sucralose, especially when there are so many safe alternative sweeteners out there. I think that we have to be careful with some of these things that are sweeteners that are, as they're considered healthy, but they're not good for us. So things that contain sucralose could possibly be diet sodas, sugar, when a product says sugar-free on the label, protein powders. Ooh, I got to tell you, there's some ingredients in those jugs that you got to look through and make sure that that's even actually a good thing to have in your smoothie. Maybe you're better off with your smoothie sans any powder, right? Pre-workout drinks and things and after workout drinks can contain this too, but you can usually find versions of protein mixes or these kind of drink powders that are with stevia, monk fruit, or any other healthy sweetener instead. I think even honey is a better choice than something like this sucralose. Here's another one, aspartame. Oh, if aspartame killed you, I probably wouldn't be doing this video right now, because I definitely drank a lot of Diet Coke growing up. It was just like the 80s, and that's what we drank. And so I'm still here. I have no idea what's going to happen later, but NutraSweet, it was such a big sweetener, major artificial sweetener, definitely interferes with the gut. Could be the root of all evil for me. I don't know, maybe. I think there's a lot of other things there, but basically it changes the type of gut bacteria that you have. And it makes it very hard for us to process. So there's no reason, again, to use aspartame. Diet soda and other products usually have aspartame in them. We don't have to consume those. There are natural sweetened sodas. There's all these other things coming out on the market. Again, be careful and read the labels. The last one I'm going to do on food additives, because I think it'll be helpful, is BPA. So this is not technically a food additive, but it's part of food packaging, and it's important for us to be aware of it. So bisphenol A is BPA, and bisphenol S are BPSs, and bisphenol F, as in Frank, are BPFs. While they are a component of plastic, and we have a lot of plastic packaging, I think like everything's in plastic now. If you just kind of go to the store and you look around, like everything seems like it's in plastic, from the fruits to the vegetables to, and of course, all the drinks and the meats so it's just plastic. But it also lines metal cans. So when I first started to do my functional medicine elimination diet plan I was told to stop eating things out of a can, so no canned food. And I didn't really understand that, but now I understand about the lining of the cans with this material. And so in mice, BPA increases damaging gut bacteria, and it increases the risk of irritable bowel syndrome and colorectal cancer. I want to say just real quickly that I have had a few friends recently in the last year or so diagnosed with colorectal cancer. One was much younger than me by about 10 years. She is a nurse practitioner, so she knows about health. So it wasn't like, literally she had no symptoms, colorectal cancer, no family history, no sign that she was sick other than she had some abnormal lab work that came back. And I just have to wonder if some of this isn't environmental, right? Like we know the cancers in particular are potentially coming from this environmental insult, whether it's things we can control, like we're talking about right now about food, but then a lot of things we can't control. I don't have all the answers for this, but I feel like because I can't control exactly how much pesticide they're using in my community for the grass and trees and bug, we have a lot of mosquitoes where I am. So, pest control, but I can be more mindful, and maybe even a little bit over controlling on the food I'm choosing and not choose foods that have these top 5 food additives in. So I hope that this has been helpful to you. You can always pause and go back if you want to jot down the names, but the best thing we can do is avoid this plastic packaging and look for packages that are BPA, BPS, or BPF free. I do see containers that say BPA free now, even water bottles and that kind of thing. Okay, moving on, food sensitivity. Food sensitivity, we can look for these food sensitivities. This can be a big thing in our remove part because if there's something we're eating that we're sensitive to that we don't know about, it's very hard to move forward to the other 3 R's if we aren't really sure what could be causing our symptoms. I did an entire masterclass on food sensitivities, the elimination diet. If you feel like that's something you want to go back and review, that's in the masterclass sections. And certainly send me a message if you want to talk a little bit more on this in particular, but I'm going to kind of push through this into some of the other topics on remove so that we can, get more into this part since we have a whole masterclass on food sensitivity you can review. Gluten. Gluten gets a bad rap, and there's celiac disease, which is a true allergy to gluten that is diagnosed through a primary doctor office through blood testing. There are gluten sensitivities that is just like a hyper response to gluten. And many people in conventional medicine are kind of concerned about the widespread recommendation of everybody needs to get rid of gluten from their diet because they feel like it's maybe not an antidote to all that ails us, right? So the compelling reasons to eliminate gluten can be many. It can be, well, logically, if gluten causes celiac disease for people, maybe it's bad for me too. There's a lot of celebrities that have gone gluten-free that the people admire. And so then they say, well, I want to do that too. And then anecdotally, it can be like a testimonial. Like I've given my own testimonials on gluten, although I think that's just one small aspect of changes I made that because it helped me with some bothersome symptoms doesn't mean that you eliminating gluten is going to do that for you. And of course, there's a lot of marketing and a lot of money in gluten-free products. I'm sure you've noticed too that the grocery stores have more options for gluten-free than ever before. Much of these products are packaged with, I don't know, I guess I'm going to have to review the 5 food additives and make sure those aren't all lurking in there, because I'd probably be better off to eat a piece of, sourdough bread or something. I think that you can do a gluten removal, like of wheat, barley, rye, and just see how you feel. But if it doesn't make a huge difference for you when you bring back the food and you don't feel your symptoms come back, then that's probably not the thing to do. But let's say, okay, well, Jen, I'm a gluten conscious person. I don't know if I don't think I have an allergy, right? Or maybe you've even been tested for celiac and you don't have that. And I think, though, if you have a sensitivity and you're experiencing abdominal pain, diarrhea, bloating, feeling full, having an itchy rash, if it's a child and a child is experiencing like a growth delay, yes, there are reliable ways to diagnose true celiac. And then if you or a family member feels better just not eating it, your bowels are more regular, you're not having this alternating diarrhea, constipation, that's my story, then eliminating gluten is a good idea. But we don't want to truly avoid it 100% because it may not be the root of all evil. You can certainly do 3 weeks of removing it. And again, like I said, if you, like I do, feel better not eating it, I go out of my way to really avoid it. But I don't think the answer is eating a bunch of packaged food that's just gluten-free. So that's a mistake that I've made and done. And I don't think that's the way to a less inflammatory remove step, which is what we're reviewing today. So I hope that makes sense. I think you can go ahead and remove it if it makes you feel better. But if you don't notice much of a change when you bring it back, but in general, eating a lot of breads is probably not great for any of us, unless it's something you're making yourself at home, because breads are packaged and they're made in a processing place. So unless you're having a source of bread that is completely more of a clean source, then probably less bread in general and grains like wheat, barley, and rye is a good idea. Okay, alcohol. I have a lot on this topic. I want to go into this a little bit because drinking alcohol can really wreck our gut. And I can say that because I loved to drink alcohol. I recently, through COVID, started back with a little bit of wine at night, meaning like six ounces roughly. And I've put that aside again, especially as I'm coaching us through the 4 R's for the next 4 months. And I'm going to really, if not completely eliminate, definitely only keep it to like 1 or 2 days a week of something, because I know that alcohol affects the gut. The research is there. Everything society tells us about alcohol is the opposite, and our culture is very alcohol friendly. But one of the things that we can do for our gut and the 100 trillion bacteria is to avoid this gluten and alcohol and see if there's a change, right? So when you do an elimination diet, you can do the gluten and you can do the alcohol at the same time. Now, we just talked about bringing gluten back and it might be fine, but do you really need to bring alcohol back? I don't know. I think you have to decide yourself how much it benefits you, because we know that it's reduced immunity or autoimmunity. It has nervous system effects. increased risk for diabetes, increased risk for cancer, cardiovascular system effects, thyroid and metabolism effects, liver and detoxification pathway problems. It can inflame our joints and tendons, and certainly digestion, heartburn, irritable bowel syndrome, all sorts of things, colitis and inflammatory disease in the bowels, and then stress hormones and adrenal problems. And when the bad bacteria outnumber the good bacteria, that's what we call dysbiosis, or an imbalance in our gut bacteria symmetry. And when we drink alcohol, this has a profound effect on how many bacteria are good for us and how many are not so good for us. And studies show that people who drink regularly, including to excess, have guts that look very different than those who don't drink any alcohol. It can lead to this increased intestinal permeability. It can interfere, again, like I said, with how our immune system's even functioning, which in this day and age, as we go on past year two of the COVID-19 pandemic, now more than ever, we want our immune system performing as best as it can. And people who regularly consume alcohol are prone to dependence on alcohol. And this has like a gut-brain relationship that's strongly influenced by, our gut microbiome. So if we want to protect our brains, not drinking alcohol is actually a really good way to go about that. This low grade chronic inflammation is the problem. So it's not that it's, but I'm not binge drinking every weekend. I'm just having a couple glasses after work, or I'm going to a happy hour 1 or 2 nights a week and having, maybe 2 or 3 drinks. But even episodic drinking, 5 or more drinks for men and 4 or more drinks for women in the space of 2 hours can increase the toxins in our blood, which are associated with bad bacteria, and disrupt the guts, disrupt our gut. So pretty significantly. If you're watching this and you're like, I don't remember the last time I had 4 drinks, that's good. I remember 4 drinks maybe 15 years ago. I mean, as we get older, we try to get a little bit wiser, but if you are watching this and having 4 drinks over 3 or 4 hours on a weekend isn't out of line, it might be something to look at, because even cutting that in half can make a big difference for you. So what's the big takeaway here on alcohol? It can seem harmless because we're sporadically consuming it. And I've fallen back into that trap many times. I have a pretty significant history of alcoholism in my family on both sides. It's a easy habit to fall back into because it does work on our receptors that give us pleasure, right? And relaxation. But it can have a major impact on our guts. And if we want to heal and optimize, the alcohol should really be limited to almost none. It can actually be a big reason why you haven't had the healing to this point if you're still consuming alcohol. So who's most susceptible to alcohol related gut problems? If you have an existing autoimmune condition or other chronic condition like thyroid or adrenal problem or intestinal problem or metabolic issue, if you have frequent constipation and or diarrhea or alternating, if you have heartburn like reflux, ulcers, other stomach problems, if you've already been diagnosed with something like SIBO or celiac disease. If you have liver problems, you know that, for whatever reason, you have increased liver enzymes or fatty liver disease. If you have skin problems, eczema, acne, psoriasis, frequent rashes, if you flush easily, especially when you're consuming alcohol, if you're having a flushing of the face, whereas that's more of like a redness or a feeling of heat, and if you feel like you have quote unquote hormone problems, your hormones feel off balance, you just don't feel like you have the energy, if you're struggling to lose weight or gain weight, this is a reason to not have alcohol. And certainly if you're prone to allergies, seasonal allergies even, and if you have histamine issues at all, that's a reason to not consume any alcohol. Because what we'll get when we remove the alcohol is a lot of benefits. Better hormone balance, reduced inflammation, better metabolism, less gut problems, fewer cravings. Cravings are very tied to alcohol. And of course, we're protecting our liver, which we don't always give the most credit to. It's such an important organ of our body, and it does so much heavy lifting for us all the time. We just really want to protect that. Okay, so that was a lot on alcohol, but let's just go to sugar, because sugar is one to remove and to make sure that we're paying attention to. And I could use this lesson myself, so I hope that I take my own words to heart here, because sugar can keep good microbes from colonizing our gut. Simple sugars like fructose and glucose aren't just nutrients. They can also halt the production of proteins that foster the growth of our beneficial gut microbes. When it comes to sweets, overindulging in sweets can really mess up our metabolism and our body. And sugar is contributing to all sorts of conditions like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, cavities, right? Our teeth. And in our body, where we have the trillions of bacteria that inhabit the gut, we want to make sure that this chronic, sweet tooth, I definitely have a sweet tooth, doesn't deter the beneficial bacteria that need a place to live that they can thrive in, right? So I kind of think of it like, the more sugar we're eating, we're kind of like dousing the area with like, the good bacteria is just like, oh, send me some oxygen. This place is full of like dust, and we can't even do what we need to do. It's just there's so much sugar here. We know that even I think the University of California in San Diego, they did a study, and they were showing the interaction between diet and the microbes in the gut. And they found that sugar, we actually don't absorb as many minerals and nutrients because of the sugar that's taking up, it's taking away these good bacteria that can absorb all these nutrients. And in order to have our guts perform better, we want these to have the cleanest diet. We want these microbes to be getting a clean diet. It's not to say you can never have table sugar or you shouldn't be eating fruits that are rich in sugars, but it's very hard to make the good bacteria shine through if we have an over sugar laden diet. There's one important human gut bacteria that is called B theta for short. It's called Bacteroides theta iatromycon. I don't know. We'll call it B theta because that's so much easier to say for short. And it's found in individuals who enjoy fiber-rich diets and maintain a healthy weight. So they've actually pinpointed a specific microbe that's in people that maintain a healthy weight and are a good diet. And on the other hand, there's another group of microbes that are found more so in, let's say, people, overweight people and obese people. There are other microbes. And wouldn't it be amazing if we could crack the weight thing finally, with the fact that it's not necessarily, oh, I eat X and Y happens, but more so that when I stay away from sugar-laden foods in general, my gut bacteria thrives more so. Plus, I'm adding in these gut nourishing things, which the next slide will be on. That would be amazing, right? So what are we going to eat? More of these kind of things: herbs and spices, extra virgin olive oil, high fiber foods, veggies, fruits, nuts, mushrooms. If you don't love them, maybe find a way to cook them in something that you love. Maybe put them in soup. I don't know. Figure out how to get more mushrooms in your diet. Omega-3 fatty acids, those are big in salmon, and you can also take a supplement for them. I find that even in preparing for this masterclass, what this reminded me so much of, well, I've been looking also back at my own diet the last year or two. And people around me say, oh, you eat really healthy. And I'll agree, like, I'm not eating fast food. But I have let quite a few things slide, maybe because there's the feel-good foods, the sugar foods, I would say, the salty foods that are packaged. There's a lot of emotion tied to eating for me, and that there's some soothing things with food that I've always had, even as a child. And food has been soothing to me in just different times in my life. And when you're an emotional eater, I don't know, maybe some of you listening can, relate to it. Maybe this doesn't sound like anything you relate to, but when you're an emotional eater, it's very comforting, some foods you get. And I think in a time when there was a lot of uncertainty, I was finding comfort in things that were, this was temporary comfort, but, still comfort all the same. And it's not that I'm not, harboring, like, I'm not feeling shame about it, or, it is what it is. And, I guess what I'm trying to say is that even if you haven't been eating that great and you want to help your gut, and you're in Love Your Gut Club, so you must care about your gut and you must care about your health. It's okay if we kind of fall off a bit and then we get back on, or something derails us and we get back on. And this, I'm 4 years into my health improvement, and I still have to reset from time to time. And it was one of the main reasons I wanted to do Love Your Gut Club, not only for, the benefit to others, but the benefit to myself, so that I can remember these things that are important, and that I can go back to these fundamental ways of healing that are not difficult. It's really not that difficult to not buy processed foods laden with our additives. It's not that difficult to say no to extra glasses of wine. It's not that difficult to eat less sugar. That one's a little bit difficult, but I'm on the journey too. I think it's not like there's ever a destination. It's not like, oh, I'm at the end. I did this for a year and everything's good. There'll be times when you have to revisit the 4 R's and keep moving forward, maybe with a little different approach, or definitely back to these fundamentals. So let's review those. It's important to take away the triggers first, at least until the gut is healed. Like we were talking about gluten earlier. You don't have to take it away forever, but I would take it away for at least 3 weeks and see what happens. Alcohol is another one. It doesn't have to be forever gone, but I would significantly decrease, if not eliminate, just as you do with gluten. just to see how do you feel after 3 weeks without any. So stress, food sensitivities, the elimination diet I mentioned before. We have the whole masterclass on food sensitivities, elimination diet, tips, tricks, why to do it, how to do it. I'm actually coming out with an elimination diet companion because I've had a lot of people ask me about support throughout the 21 days because it can be challenging at best. As members of Love Your Gut Club, you can receive that when it comes out at a significant discount. So let's just go real quickly into testing and then we'll wrap up here. Gut testing. What is stool testing? Why do we do it in functional medicine? So to diagnose digestive tract issues or things like someone may be complaining not even about GI symptoms, but maybe they have ongoing fatigue. Their brain fog is really high. They feel like they're bloated all the time. They can't lose weight. They'll do something like a stool test to look at the gut microbiome and see the inflammation levels. And these inflammation levels have to do with studying the good bacteria versus the bad bacteria. And we just talked all in detail about that when it came to sugar and alcohol, making it hard for the good bacteria to thrive and the bad bacteria to be the rulers, so to speak. Stool testing allows functional medicine practitioners to understand the root cause of the problem. It will show you specific information on bacteria and help us to treat those bacteria. That doesn't mean that you'll be on antibiotics, although some practitioners do put people on it. It doesn't mean that you're going to be on a lot of other prescription medications, but it can help to pinpoint how much dysbiosis is going on. Stool testing isn't imperative to do to heal your gut, but it is an option. You can do it yourself at home. It can be self-ordered. If you'd like that information, I can provide it for you. You can self-order the test kit. You pay for it out of pocket. They send the test kit to your house. You get a jar similar to this one here. You place your specimens as exactly how they tell you, and you send it off through the mail. The mail is amazing now, right? There's so many things going through the mail. And then you get the result back. Now, of course, you need help with interpretation of that result, and that's where I can help refer you to a functional medicine practitioner if you want to work directly with someone that way. And, we can kind of go from there. SIBO testing. SIBO testing is, and what is SIBO? Let's just talk about this real quick. So small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is a condition that affects millions of people. It's commonly overlooked in our allopathic medicine, but it can definitely affect people greatly. I do know that in recent trips to the gastrointestinal doctor, at least here in Southwest Florida, a friend of mine went and they did mention SIBO. They did test her for it. It was with like a breath test. So there was testing there. I was kind of excited that they were at least looking for that. And it does put you at risk for poor absorption of food and nutrients, which can cause overall a lower quality of health. And then, of course, chronic symptoms. And in order to maintain healthy gut bacteria, you have to have a proper amount of stomach acid and normal bowel mobility. So you want the motility, So you want to be able, the motility is like something we don't control. It just, right, it happens as I'm talking here. The gut is moving as you're listening. Your gut is doing what it's supposed to do, ideally. And these components of digestion are somewhat, automatic, but they can become, off the rails a bit if there are, if there's a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, then the large intestine can't work as well as it needs to. So we have a small intestine and we have a large intestine. And this is something that affects the small intestine because it has relatively low amounts of bacteria, just generally speaking. A lot of our nutrient exchange, and I always say like the big work is happening in the large part of the colon, the large intestine. That's like the workhorse. It's the one that, it goes like up and around, and it's really like the workhorse of our body. But the the small intestine, it's important that it is able to work as well as it can. And the causes of SIBO are a couple things. Low stomach acid, proton pump inhibitors. It seems like every patient I see over 60 is on things like omeprazole, Prilosec, Nexium, other GI medications that can cause this overgrowth. Celiac disease, we mentioned earlier. Chronic constipation can cause this backup of the bacteria. Surgeries, slow digestion, low thyroid, stress causes everything, right? Diet high in sugar, diet high in alcohol. We're seeing some recurring repetition here, right? Infections like H. pylori, which contributes to ulcers, food poisoning, and then some structural issues. But you can know if you have SIBO if you have constant burping, bloating that's worse at the end of the day, if you feel better when you eat like a low inflammation type of diet, if the symptoms get better with antibiotic treatment, if you feel worse after taking a probiotic, if you have an uncomfortable feeling of fullness or gas immediately after eating or loose stools, you could have something like SIBO. And complications of having SIBO is that there's poor digestion of our fats and carbohydrates and proteins. There could be a vitamin deficiency where we're not absorbing vitamins as well as we should. Weakened bones, which is really key for both men and women, but women seem to fall prey to this a lot. So osteoporosis, we want to try to avoid that at all costs. Yes, there are medications for that now, but a lot of those have their own side effects. And if we can maintain good, strong bones by being able to absorb our vitamins and nutrients, that's, I think, the winning formula. Kidney stones are other complications of SIBO. And so in functional medicine, there's something called a SIBO breath test, and it's the most common way of diagnosing. It's the same as with conventional medicine. You basically begin breathing into a tube after fasting overnight, and you get a base read, and then you drink a specialized mixture to see if the bacteria releases hydrogen, methane, or a combo of both. And after drinking, we ask the patients to do a breath sample over a 3-hour time frame at 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 120 minutes, 150 minutes, and 180 minutes. And it'll be positive if you show certain readings at the 3 hours from the original start time. The treatment, let's say, okay, things are positive. Okay, it looks like you have SIBO. The treatment involves nutritional therapy. It can be antibiotic therapy. It can be motility supplements and preventative measures. Most people recommend the elemental diet or a food map diet. A low food map diet is something that stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols, which are short chain carbohydrates that ferment in the small intestine and can feed overgrown bacteria. And this has been helpful to decrease the abnormal high levels of the bacteria here in the small intestine. So the first step, if you were positive for this, or maybe you have a lot of the symptoms and you just want to begin doing something for it, you can eliminate the type of foods that can cause this increased bacterial growth. And we've definitely covered, I think, when we talk about the things earlier, like sugar, alcohol, food additives, this is all coming into the same thing. And this is why I wanted to include SIBO in this masterclass, because I think we're slaying the same dragon somewhat. You can have a little bit of a different, whether it's a diagnosis of chronic fatigue, or it's SIBO, or you have high histamines because you're a very allergic person. We can get there with a lot of the same treatment, right? So getting rid of things that cause more inflammation and feeding good bacteria so that we can have healthy guts. There are some herbal antimicrobials that a lot of functional medicine practitioners use versus using, like, say, conventional antibiotics. And then focusing on prevention is probably the key going forward with something like SIBO. And that includes all the things that we talked about earlier in the slideshow. And if you have more questions about SIBO, just feel free to reach out to me. So in conclusion, many dietary and lifestyle factors can adversely affect our digestive health, and it contributes to a number of health conditions, chronic health conditions, acute health conditions, symptoms that are just smoldering, all of that. The 4 R's of gut healing, which today we covered mainly remove, is to minimize the factors that lead to this increased permeability and inflammation, and to help promote our gut healing and optimization. So if you need more guidance, and we're going to month 2. So next month is going to be a second R, and then we'll do the 3rd, and then we'll do the 4th. So this is going really deep for this, because I think it can be very helpful for you to be able to review this at any time. I know for me, this is a great review, like I mentioned earlier. But if you want to consider scheduling a one-to-one Zoom call with me, we can do that. Introducing certain dietary supplements can be helpful for you. I don't think supplements hold like the gold or the number one, answer for all that ails us. But I think that when we're dealing with, most of us are nutrient deficient, and we have to make sure the supplements that we have are high quality. There's no reason to pay for supplements that don't work well. So we want to use pharmaceutical grade supplements that are high in quality and good value, though. We're not talking about spending, $1,000 on supplements. You can probably get everything you need for just a few $100s or less. And that would be, I think I buy, for Dennis and I buy supplements every maybe 3 to 4 months and spend maybe $100 or so. So it's not too, and that's for 2 people, right? So it just depends on how many things you may need to take. I think starting with just like a standard amount of supplements is a good idea, so that you can begin to build up that nutrient content in your body and feed the bacteria, the good bacteria, with what it needs. And that doesn't mean you're just buying probiotics, because as you saw earlier with SIBO, probiotics can actually be worse for your gut depending on what's going on. So we would talk through that. We can also fine tune the current supplements you're on. I know I've done that for a lot of people over time that were, kind of using things that weren't so great. So they just would use them up and then get something different going forward. I don't like to throw things out. I like people to use up what they have. I feel that way about skincare too. I'm like, oh, don't throw that away. It's still good, but maybe do this with it. And then this way you can get the most out of Love Your Gut Club, especially if you, even meeting quarterly can be a great option while you're in the membership. So I'm offering a special where members of Love Your Gut Club going forward will be able to do a one-on-one power shot coaching call with me at 30% off. And you just put in the code at checkout, LYGC121, and that's the coupon code, and I'll give you 30% off. I hope you'll take advantage of it. I definitely would love to see you on a Zoom and help you in any way I can. And otherwise, though, you can certainly send a message through the community. I think that the Podia platform is fantastic for it alerts me when someone is asking something. So go ahead and put that in there. And I hope you have a great day and you enjoy this masterclass. Take care.